Good morning. The Subcommittee on Technology and Innovation will now come to order. Pursuant to notice, the Subcommittee on Technology and Innovation meets to consider the following measures: H.R. 4847, the United States Fire Administration Reauthorization Act of 2000. It says 2007. It occurs to me that we are no longer. Is that going to be an administrative amendment? Okay, terrific. As read, 2007, H.R. 5161, the Green Transportation Infrastructure Research and Technology Transfer Act, and H.R. 3916 to provide for the next generation of border and maritime security technologies. We will now proceed with a markup, beginning with opening statements, and the chairman recognizes himself. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the first Science and Technology markup of 2008. We had a very productive first session in 2007, and I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues to pass more good legislation this year. Today we will be considering three bills, each of which deals with protecting and enhancing our nation's critical infrastructure and our environment. H.R. 4847, introduced by the Vice Chair of the Subcommittee, Representative Mitchell, the gentleman from Arizona, and with Subcommittee Ranking Member Dr. Gingrey as an original co-sponsor, reauthorizes the United States Fire Administration. USFA is an important resource for our nation's firefighters, providing training, fire safety awareness for the public, data collection services, and fire suppression and prevention research and technology. I'm pleased we are considering H.R. 4847 today. It is a bill worked on hard by both Republicans and Democrats and will authorize the USFA to continue its role as a leader and resource for the nation's fire service and help enable firefighters to meet the dynamic and growing mission of the fire service in the 21st century. We will also be considering H.R. 5161, the Green Transportation Infrastructure Research and Technology Transfer Act. As you may remember, this past May, we heard from the Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Department of Transportation, as well as representatives of local governments and industry. They agreed that we have a great opportunity to manage and protect our nation's water resources through the use of innovative technologies and also serve as transportation infrastructure as means for managing, reducing, and filtering stormwater runoff. The EPA witness, Assistant Administrator for Water, Ben Grumbles, is already making a great effort to promote the expanded use of such infrastructure around the United States. But he and the other witnesses talked about a number of barriers which this bill works to overcome through research and education programs at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Finally, H.R. 3916, introduced by Ranking Member Hall, authorizes programs at the Department of Homeland Security to improve the technology used to protect the nation's borders and ports of entry. Border security officers have an incredibly difficult job. It is part law enforcement, part first responder, part diplomat, and part detective. It is clear that these agents need the help of new technology to do their jobs better and to make our borders more secure. Technology can act as additional eyes and ears for Border Patrol agents. This bill has special importance to me as these technologies help reinforce security efforts at ports in addition to land borders. The Port of Portland processed more than 14 million tons of cargo in 2007, and our international airport also screened in a number of people coming in from overseas. I know that the hardworking officers managing security at the Port of Portland could use the assistance of innovative technologies. These three bills share an important common theme: the use of research and technology to solve some of our nation's most pressing problems. I'm eager to join my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in advancing these important objectives. And now I recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Dr. Greengree, the gentleman from Georgia, to present his opening remarks.
Chairman Wu, I thank you for holding this subcommittee markup on three pieces of legislation that address a wide range of issues under, under the jurisdiction of the Technology and Innovation Subcommittee. We have the privilege today to be conducting the Science Committee's first official business of the year and the second session of the 110th Congress. Today we consider H.R. 4847, the United States Fire Administration Reauthorization Act of 2007, H.R. 5161, the Green Transportation Infrastructure Research and Technology Transfer Act, and finally H.R. 3916, a Border Security Technology Bill. As we consider each piece of legislation, we'll reaffirm that the Technology and Innovation Subcommittee plays an important role in a number of issues currently facing our country. Today, we will be examining issues facing first responders and local communities on a daily basis, the impact that our transportation infrastructure has on the contamination of our water supplies, and developing the next generation technologies for the federal government to keep our borders secure. Mr. Chairman, I want to also thank you for the way the subcommittee has conducted the process by which each piece of legislation is being considered today. Each of the bills are being marked up today has gone through what we all refer to and know as regular order. The subcommittee held an individual hearing on each bill last year in 2007, and that provided members with the opportunity to ask questions of these experts in order for us to be better informed as we crafted each bill to hopefully perfection or near perfection. Furthermore, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for allowing us to work in a bipartisan manner on each piece of legislation. As these three bills demonstrate, we can accomplish more for the American people when Republicans and Democrats work together. Mr. Chairman, I applaud you and your staff for working with me and the Republican staff on the committee to balance all perspectives to make these bills sound policy. So, Mr. Chairman, I hope this markup is an indication of how we can expect the Technology and Innovation Subcommittee to continue to operate throughout the year 2008. I look forward to working with you on these issues that we will discuss and debate today, as well as other matters that will come before the subcommittee for the rest of this year. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Greengree, and without objection, members may place statements in the record at this point. We will now consider H.R. 4847, the United States Fire Administration Reauthorization Act of 2007. I yield to Mr. Mitchell, the gentleman from Arizona, 5 minutes to describe this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased that the subcommittee is marking up H.R. 4847, a bill to reauthorize the U.S. Fire Administration, introduced by myself with the original co-sponsorship of the subcommittee ranking member, Dr. Greengree. The wildfires this past fall in California reminded us all of the vital role the fire service plays in protecting our communities. Although we have made significant strides in reducing fire-related deaths and injuries since Congress created the Fire Administration in the early 1970s, over 3,000 Americans a year still die in fires, and many more than that are injured. The nation also suffers over $11 billion in fire-related property losses annually. Fire clearly continues to be a major problem in the U.S. The U.S. Fire Administration is an invaluable resource for the thousands of firefighters and emergency personnel around the country. Through training, educational materials, data collection, and other services, USFA provides tools and leadership to the fire service and the communities they serve. H.R. 4847 authorizes this important agency for 4 years at funding levels consistent for USFA to fully carry out its mission. It authorizes USFA to focus its resources on pressing challenges for today's first responders, like fighting fires in the wildland-urban interface and responding to incidents involving hazardous materials. The bill also directs USFA to improve the National Fire Incident Reporting System, which provides important data on fire events to policymakers at all levels of government. At the hearing the subcommittee held last October, we learned that today's firefighters are called on to respond to and prepare for an increasing number of emergencies. This reauthorization gives USFA the authority and direction to meet the dynamic and evolving mission of the nation's fire service. The bill also directs USFA to continue its leadership in addressing firefighter health and safety. Tragically, every year, over 100 firefighters die in the line of duty. H.R. 4847 directs the fire administrator to educate local departments on voluntary national consensus standards that address firefighter health and safety and encourage communities to adopt these standards. H.R. 4847 is the product of bipartisan collaboration and considerable input from the fire service community. The resources and leadership of USFA are an essential part of the ability of the fire service to protect our cities, towns, and communities, and I urge the subcommittee to pass this bill and report it out favorably. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. And now I'd like to recognize Dr. Gingrey, the co-sponsor of the legislation, for any remarks that he may have.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for providing our subcommittee with the opportunity to consider H.R. 4847, the United States Fire Administration Reauthorization Act of 2007. As the lead Republican sponsor of this legislation, I want to commend, of course, the bill's sponsor, Mr. Mitchell from Arizona, for bringing forward this legislation to reauthorize the U.S. Fire Administration. I am very pleased that we have worked, again, in a bipartisan manner over these past few months to prepare the bill we have before us today. The mission of USFA is to reduce life and economic losses due to fire and related emergencies through leadership, advocacy, coordination, and support. This organization provides vital assistance in the areas of training, fire education, and awareness, and it awards grants to a number of local fire departments across this country. These activities have made a substantial impact over the past 30 years. Mr. Chairman, it's important to note that because of the work of the USFA, smoke alarms are now standard issue in residents across the country. Over a million firefighters have received advanced training, and firefighter equipment and safety continually improves. USFA should be proud of its record of achievement. However, it's also clear that improvements can still be made. In the last 10 years, deaths that are related to fires have decreased by approximately 25%. From nearly 5,000 in 1996 to 3,675 in 2006. Although that decrease in fire-related deaths is commendable, the United States still has one of the highest death rates from fire in the entire industrialized world. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, despite decreases in the number of fires, direct damage costs are increasing and have surpassed $10 billion per year. Put another way, in an average year, fires cause as much damage in the United States as hurricanes. That's a surprising statistic. The reauthorization of USFA will allow the agency to continue to improve our preparedness and reduce our vulnerability to fire. Mr. Chairman, however, I think you know I have some concerns about the adequacy and potentially duplicative nature of fire administrating activities in the realm of EMS services, emergency medical services, in regard to what is already provided in some communities. As we move forward on H.R. 4847, I hope that other members of the Science Committee and the fire community can continue to discuss better ways to implement best practices for training, system design, and on-the-scene care for fire-based EMS, emergency medical services, while making sure to work with the existing medical services in these communities. You can imagine a situation where you have 3 or 4 competing first responders, if you will, all skilled in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, fighting for trying to save the lives of either a victim or one of our brave firefighters. So I think this is I want to make sure you understand why I'm concerned about that. I just want good, close coordination. The current bill is an important and well-crafted step forward for USFA. I urge all of my colleagues on the subcommittee support the bill and support the upcoming manager's amendment. It makes minor technical changes to the underlying legislation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman, and I understand that Mr. Hall, the ranking member of the full committee, would like to make a statement at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. I just want to add to what the gentleman from Georgia has said. That, you know, we've always heard it said that water and fire are wonderful friends but fearful enemies, and we've occasioned both of them. Appreciate water and fire for the good they do, but we know that they bring devastation, and the tornado that hit over in Kentucky brought to light the work of the firefighters and the good work that they do. I think it's a shame that it took 9/11 for the American people to really, truly appreciate firefighters and others that defend us and protect their property and their lives. So I think it's great to take our hat off to them and express our thanks and our gratitude to them. I thank the chairman for having this hearing, and I thank the gentleman from Georgia for his very appropriate statements. Very pro-firefighter. I don't know how you can say enough about them, good about them for the things that they've done, but they're part of the treasures of this country, and it's good for this committee and for this Congress to honor them every chance we get. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, and as always, your comments are so pithy and also provide a launch point. You referred to the fearsome adversarial nature of fire and water potentially, and I just want to add that what was ignored prior to our amendments that this committee worked, the subcommittee, the full committee worked 6 years ago. Fire on water, that's fire on marine fires, were not included in eligible training programs and research under the Fire Administration, and that's something we changed. This committee changed several years ago, and that is an important change that we retain in the current legislation. Thank you for your comments, and thank you, Dr. Gingrey and Mr. Mitchell. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that members proceed with amendments in the order of the roster without objection. So ordered. First amendment on the roster is a manager's amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Mr. Mitchell, are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 4847 offered by Mr. Mitchell of Arizona.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading without objection. So ordered. I recognize the gentleman from Arizona for 5 minutes to...
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm introducing this amendment to H.R. 4847 to change references in the bill to, quote, voluntary national consensus standards to read, quote, national voluntary consensus standards, the preferred term. It also makes a technical change to subsection C of section 4. And I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Is there further discussion of the amendment? If not, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? Hearing none, the vote is on the bill, H.R. 4847, United States Fire Administration Reauthorization Act of 2007, as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I now recognize Dr. Gingrey to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the subcommittee favorably report H.R. 4847 as amended to the full committee. And furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the subcommittee legislative report and make necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill as amended in accordance with the recommendations of the subcommittee.
The question is on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed will say no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Subcommittee members may submit additional or minority views on the measure. We will now move to consider H.R. 5161, the Green Transportation Infrastructure Research and Technology Transfer Act, and I yield myself 5 minutes to describe this bill. H.R. 5161, the Green Transportation Infrastructure Research and Technology Transfer Act, authorizes research and education programs within the Federal Highway Administration and Research and Innovative Technology Administration, University Transportation Centers. Green infrastructure includes materials and design techniques that help mitigate water pollution by managing, reducing, and filtering runoff. These programs at the Department of Transportation will advance the understanding of the benefits of green transportation infrastructure and its impact on the environment, and help policymakers and builders make smart decisions about where and how to include green infrastructure in their transportation systems. The activities can include research and development of green infrastructure technologies, technology transfer programs, assessment of the impact of regulations on the adoption of these green technologies at a local level, and education campaigns. The bill also authorizes FWHA to incorporate green infrastructure design and construction training in the National Highway Institute curriculum, which is offered to state and local highway contractors and workers. Green transportation infrastructure is a simple, exciting, potentially cost-saving set of technologies that can help solve substantial pollution problems in our communities while increasing energy efficiency. I look forward to working with members of the committee and subcommittee to pass this legislation, and I now recognize Dr. Gingrey to present any remarks he may have on this legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I commend you for bringing forward this legislation, the Green Transportation Infrastructure Research and Technology Transfer Act, that addresses an overlooked and important water contamination and pollution problem in our country. And I'm glad to be working with you on this issue. While we all know that the nation's roads and highways are a vital part of our transportation infrastructure, few realize the persistent problem that can be created due to rainwater runoff from these asphalt and concrete pavements. As rainwater flows along the surface of our highways, it accumulates and carries pollutants such as oil and grease from the vehicles that pass overhead. Left unchecked, this water, along with these pollutants, unfortunately finds its way into our freshwater lakes, our rivers, and our aquifers. This runoff is part of what is known as non-point source pollution, and it's currently the leading cause of water quality problems. Additionally, these pollutants can have a tremendous impact on freshwater ecosystems and have the potential of becoming a part of drinking water supplies across the country. Mr. Chairman, the importance of adequate freshwater supplies is not lost on me. The state of Georgia, as I think most of you know, is still suffering from the effects of last year's historic drought and more is predicted for this year. The most serious and immediate problem has been the dwindling water supply out of reservoirs, which are critical to the water supply of millions of people in North Georgia, metropolitan Atlanta, and yes, downstream in the states of Alabama and Florida, and their businesses. Mr. Chairman, for the areas in northwest Georgia and across the country that have been affected by severe drought over this past year, it's imperative to keep our precious freshwater supplies free from contamination. And I'm happy to see that your legislation addresses these very serious issues. H.R. 5161 provides the direction and the means by which existing university transportation centers can develop the technologies and the methods needed to help mitigate water pollution caused by our roads and our highways. Additionally, this legislation provides for the dissemination of information through technology transfer programs. By using grants, partnerships, and collaboration between university transportation centers, this bill works to ensure clean fresh water supplies for our nation by limiting the presence of pollutants caused by runoff from our roads and our highways. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for bringing forward this legislation. I urge all of my colleagues on the subcommittee support H.R. 5161, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gingrey. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? I ask unanimous consent that the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that members proceed with amendments in the order of the roster. Without objection, so ordered. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Dr. Ehlers, are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
Yes, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 5161, offered by Mr. Ehlers of Michigan.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. Recognize the gentleman from Michigan for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do want to indicate my support for the bill in addition to the list of pollutants offered by Mr. Gingrey, who represents the South. I speak on behalf of the frozen North, and we have other pollutants which are used to try to melt the ice, with sometimes salt, sometimes other combinations of chemicals, and these also do end up getting into the environment in various ways. So that's an additional reason to support the bill. My amendment is a relatively minor one, having to do with the technical aspects of the bill and having the research done instead of having it open to all universities. My bill would provide that this would be done through the 60 university transportation centers, which we already have throughout the country. They have been established to perform transportation-related research. And by using the funds from this bill and at the transportation centers, you actually can save money, because the grants, instead of going to centers which would have to use part of the grant money to establish the mechanisms for research, by sending it to current university technology centers, you are eliminating some of the overhead that you might encounter if it were made available to all individuals. The university transportation centers have been established for a number of years in some cases, but there are a number of them which were developed just recently as a result of the Safety Lou legislation we passed just 2 years. So I ask for the support of the amendment. I think it would make the use of the funds from the bill more efficient and would achieve better results, because it would go to people who are constantly dealing with transportation issues. Also, as a member of the Transportation Committee, I would say that I'm sure that this bill is jointly referred to the Transportation Committee. It would make it much more likely that this bill will zoom through the Transportation Committee without them making major changes to it. So I hope that this will help. With that, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman from Michigan, and it is my intention to support the amendment. Is there any further discussion of this amendment? If not,
Mr. Chairman,
that I recognize the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief. I just want to express my support and the support of this side for the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan, Dr. Ehlers. His amendment improves the legislation by directing the efforts to develop contaminated rainwater runoff mitigation techniques through existing university transportation centers. And that's where we already know the needed expertise exists. And additionally, Dr. Ehlers' amendment also authorizes reasonable funds to accomplish the task of these university transportation centers that are set forth in this bill. Mr. Chairman, it's a good amendment, and I urge our colleagues on this side to support the amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. And Mr. Hall, would you care to yield some of your time before yielding it back to Dr. Ehlers? I believe yes. Dr. Ehlers has.
I'll be honored. Yield. I reserve the balance of my time. I yield at this time to Dr. Ehlers.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Just a few additional points, not directly relating to the bill, but it's important to recognize the difficulties that we face in what I earlier called the frozen North. There's a lot of news today about Wisconsin having had a big snowfall and freeways to a standstill and so forth.
in Michigan, we deal with that amount of snow in a couple of weeks, and it brings unique problems to the north, and particularly unique environmental problems. Currently, as of this week, or as of yesterday, in fact, we received some more snow, and we're, I think, now up to 54 inches in my hometown of Grand Rapids for the season, and we expect to hit 80, perhaps 90. That creates unique demands and creates unique dangers for the environment in the way it is handled. And this is just an example. I'm sure in Oregon you have that in the mountainous areas, in Washington even more so. So I think this bill will really be very helpful to these states in dealing with the problem. We, in addition to Michigan, have an incredible freeze-thaw cycle. We get snow and melts, and that is murderous for the roads. And so a lot of repairs have to be done, which also have a chance for environmental pollution, because they involve just putting, because you can't lay asphalt in the middle of the winter, it involves putting the asphalt down and in a way that means it gets into the environment very readily. So there's a lot of work to be done here, and I commend you for offering this bill, and I thank Mr. Hall for yielding and for his support of the amendment.
I really and truly yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, and I thank both gentlemen, and particularly the gentleman from Michigan, for this amendment, which I do support. The weather at sea level in Oregon is one kind of weather. I have a different weather where I am about 800 or 1,000 feet up in the Portland metropolitan area. I have a little freeze-thaw cycle demonstration going on in my driveway. And if you're at 4,000 or 6,000 feet in Oregon, you have an entirely different climate at this time of year to deal with. And I think the gentleman from Michigan properly points out that the current transportation research centers are regionally distributed to deal with the differing problems of the different regions, but also interconnected in a way so that they can share data, so that folks in, say, Redmond, Oregon, can get the data that they need from perhaps a center in Michigan on freeze-thaw cycles, which may be similar. Are there any other comments or statements on this amendment? Hearing none, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? Hearing none, the vote is on the bill, H.R. 5161, the Green Transportation Infrastructure Research and Technology Transfer Act, as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. I will now recognize Mr. Hall to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the subcommittee favorably report H.R. 5161 as amended to the full committee. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the subcommittee legislative report and make necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill as amended in accordance with the recommendations of the subcommittee. I yield back.
The question is on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Subcommittee members may submit additional or minority views on the measure. We will now move to consider H.R. 3916 to provide for the next generation of border and maritime security technologies. I yield Mr. Hall 5 minutes to describe his bill.
Chairman Wu, I thank you for holding this markup and for your co-sponsorship of H.R. 3916. It's been a pleasure working with you and with Chairman Gordon and the other members of the committee to move this bill forward. I also like to thank Mr. McCall for the substantial contribution he made to the committee. He's in another hearing at this time. I thought he'd be here by now. But last week in his State of the Union address, President Bush emphasized the great importance of securing our nation's borders. I think, and of course we all believe this is a crucial issue for this committee to address, and I'm very pleased to see H.R. 3916 making steady progress. Border security is a concern of all members of Congress. We have nearly 7,500 miles of land border with Canada and with Mexico, over which 500 million people and over 2 million rail cars pass each year. In addition, we have over 300 ports that see over 9 million cargo containers each year. We have a number of reasons for wanting strict control over this traffic. For instance, according to Department of Justice statistics, over 30,000 kilograms of cocaine, heroin, and meth were seized within 150 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border in the year 2006. I know many members of this committee have worked tirelessly to end the scourge of meth in our nation. Yet, success at restricting access to meth ingredients here in the States has led drug dealers to import more across our borders. Stopping the flow of narcotics across our border remains a key to our effort to curb illegal drug use. The threat of terrorism also compels us to re-examine our borders, whether we're talking about foreign groups trying to infiltrate our country or homegrown terrorists seeking weapons and supplies. Our borders remain a critical element of our defense. Finally, in fiscal year 2005, U.S. Border Patrol agents apprehended 1.19 million people attempting to enter the country illegally. While I understand the concerns many members have regarding comprehensive immigration reform, we should not allow that issue to stymie progress deterring terrorists, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. H.R. 3916 is a positive step toward reducing our vulnerabilities at the border. Section 1 requires S&T to include cost and operational objectives in any near-term application development. This section is meant to ensure that there are baseline requirements for operational as well as technical objectives. Section 2 and 3 set up instruments to provide DHS with expert guidance from preeminent scientists, first responders, and emergency managers on an ongoing basis. Section 4 directs the Secretary of DHS to take an active role in safely incorporating unmanned aerial vehicles into the national airspace. Before this promising technology can be utilized regularly, the safety and effectiveness of sense and avoid technologies has to be demonstrated. DHS has an excellent opportunity to work collaboratively with the FAA to collect this necessary data. The tunnel detection program described in Section 5 aims at a persistent smuggling problem. Organized crime has the time and resources to avoid most border surveillance by simply digging right past them. However, directing tunnels is remarkably difficult over broad expanses, and protecting them is difficult over these expanses of land and water. Finding solutions will require added technology. This section creates a sustained program at DHS S&T to meet this need. And finally, Section 6 creates a sustained program to defeat counterfeiting. DHS S&T, however, does not have a devoted office or program in this area, and despite the clear impact on agencies such as ICE and CBP, the technologies that this program will focus on will ensure that travel, import, and identification documents are safe and secure. I believe this committee is ideally positioned to strengthen control of our nation's borders through legislation supporting effective, efficient, and evolving defenses. H.R. 3916 begins this effort. The sections in this bill reflect a single underlying theme that Science and Technology Directorate at DHS needs to establish long-term goals and objectives for border security and broaden science and technology community involvement. I look forward to bringing this bill to the full committee later this month, and I thank you for your support. Yield back my time, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. And as mentioned earlier, I think this is an important bill. I think it is a good bill, and I urge my colleagues to support it. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that members proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. Without objection, so ordered. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Mr. Mitchell, are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 3916 offered by Mr. Mitchell of Arizona.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with a reading and without objection. So ordered. I recognize the gentleman from Arizona for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm proud to co-sponsor Mr. Hall's legislation, H.R. 3916, which will help provide our border guards with technologically advanced equipment to monitor the borders. Border security is an issue that truly hits home. Illegal immigration affects Arizona more than any other state. More than half of illegal crossings over the U.S.-Mexico border happen in Arizona. These illegal crossings threaten our national security, and we must do better. When the federal government fails to live up to its responsibility, Arizona pays a hefty price. We bear the brunt of violent drug and human smuggling crimes, and our local law enforcement and emergency rooms are overburdened. I believe we must provide the resources our Border Patrol needs to keep us safe, and that is why I'm offering this amendment to help ensure that our Border Patrol has appropriate global positioning systems, or GPS technology, to protect the border. Much of the border in Arizona stretches over miles of rural landscape with no natural barriers. GPS technology can not only help keep Border Patrol in the field aware of precise location of the border, but can also help provide a clear picture of the surrounding landscape, including hills and valleys where drug smugglers and human traffickers may be hiding. GPS technology gives our Border Patrol a critical advantage over criminals trying to enter the U.S. illegally. My amendment would require the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate to work with the National Institute of Standards and Technology and the United States Geological Survey to carry out a study on the research and technology development needs in GPS technology for border security. The NIST and USGS bring important expertise in GPS technology, testing and mapping to the table, and will provide important support to the S&T Directorate. This study will determine what tools our border guards need, as well as recommend what research, development, testing, and evaluation measures need to be taken to develop next-generation technologies. This amendment would also require collaboration with U.S. Customs and Border Protection to determine what steps need to be taken to provide border guards with the appropriate GPS technology, including an assessment of cost, training, and reliability needs. This study will be reported back to Congress a year after its legislation is enacted. Once we get this report in our hands, we will be able to give to state and local governments in areas near the U.S. border who also use GPS technologies in law enforcement. Our border guards must have the technological tools to secure our borders, and I believe this amendment addresses an important challenge facing our border guards. I encourage you to support this important amendment and to support the underlying legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Is there any further discussion of the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Texas.
Yeah, I just want to make a statement or two about this. I think most members here will agree that very rarely does an author of an amendment or a bill want to see his bill amended. But as my colleagues know, the legislative process offers a lot of opportunities to improve on introduced legislation. Hopefully, these improvements are reached through an open-minded focus on good policy like Mr. Mitchell has pursued. And so I'd like to thank Mr. Mitchell for bringing his amendment to my attention and to our attention and taking the time to explain his purpose of study and listen to the suggestion for improvements. He's worked very well with us. My initial reservations have been addressed on this, and I firmly believe this amendment will provide useful information to Congress and the Department of Homeland Security on what tools can help border agents perform their duties. That's very important. I support the amendment. And again, I want to thank Mr. Mitchell, not only for his amendment, but for his good attitude of cooperation and working together. I appreciate that and look forward to finishing out this session with him. And I yield back my time.
Thank the gentleman from Texas, and we are unanimous in our support of the gentleman from Arizona's amendment. Is there any further discussion of this amendment? If not, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? Hearing none, the vote is on the bill H.R. 3916 to provide for the next generation of border and maritime security technologies as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I now recognize Mr. Hall to offer a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the subcommittee favorably report H.R. 3916 as amended to the full committee. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the subcommittee legislative report and make necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill as amended in accordance with the recommendations of the subcommittee. I yield back my time.
I thank the gentleman. The question is on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Subcommittee members may submit additional or minority views on the measure. I want to thank members of the committee and subcommittee for their attendance, and with our typical across the aisle workmanship is not the right term, but our work across the aisle and our head-spinning efficiency, we have again moved multiple pieces of legislation and conclude this subcommittee markup. Thank you all very much.
Good job.